Hi everyone, my name is Amy Uy and I am the presenter for today. I'm presenting on classroom etiquette, which is part of the American Culture and Norms webcasts. This presentation was brought to you by International Services and Programs, or ISP, which is part of College of the Canyons. If you ever need to reach us at ISP, we are available through this email below here at isp@canyons.edu. Let's get started. When you think of a traditional, sorry, when you think of a classroom, okay, what do you think of? Do you think of a traditional in-person class where you go to a building and sit down at a desk and there's an instructor who is teaching you the materials? Well, here in the United States, especially here at College of the Canyon, we have different types of classrooms. Here at College of the Canyons, we have in-person classes where, yes, you do go into a building and you physically sit down at a desk and your classmates are sitting next to you and the teacher is teaching you up at the front of the classroom. We also have 100% online classes where all interaction is online. And we have class through something called a class management system. It's basically like a room online where you submit all your materials, all your assignments, and the instructor's materials are there for you. The lectures are there through videos, and you interact with your classmates through discussions. And everything is based, of course, off of reading and writing, typing, right? And then we have the third, which is online live. And so that's sort of like a combination of meeting your classmates and your instructor um, in real time, all at a designated time, um, but you're meeting online. So you're not actually meeting in a classroom. So you might use communication tools such as Skype or Zoom so that everybody can see each other and interact at the same at the same time, right? But you'll also be doing work, homework, classwork, submitting assignments in an online classroom. So once again, that class management system that I had talked about for an 100% online class, you would also use something like that to submit your work and also interact with your classmates through discussions for online live classes. So online live is like a little bit of both. So you meet with your classmates and you see each other at a certain time, and you also do your work and submit it online. All right, so I'm going to go into this a little bit more at the end when we do some review. So what are some American classroom expectations? Um, I've been working with international students for many years, and I noticed that um, a lot of the international students who are in my classroom often feel the difference between the classroom back home and the American classroom. And this one of the major differences that is experienced is the expectation to participate and engage. The American classroom is a formal and interactive classroom. So what does it mean to participate and engage? Well, for example, if the instructor asks a question, and the instructor often will ask questions to the class, the instructor expects an answer. Not only that, the students are also encouraged to respond and ask questions, especially when something is unclear. In American culture, self-expression is very important, but it is equally as important to be polite to and considerate of the instructor and classmates. So, what are some things that we should do and we shouldn't do in an American classroom? So, here's a list of things that we should do. And I know this is a little bit long, so feel free to pause the video if you need to, if you need more time to read it. So do raise your hand before you speak and don't interrupt, right? Do think before you speak. Think about what you need to say, be prepared. Do listen to others who are speaking. Um, and of course, we don't want to interrupt. We want to be polite. And if we have something to respond or something to say, then we want to raise our hand. We do want to show that we're always actively listening. Okay, so we want to show attention and we want to show that we are paying attention to what's being said. Do show encouragement and support for your classmates because um, being in a classroom is a great opportunity to build connections, to meet friends, and also to work together. Um, and being there to support your classmates and encourage your classmates also boosts morale of the entire class. Do participate in order to show that you're paying attention, okay? And participation is also important for learning. And do engage. So you can engage by responding to the material that's being taught. Okay, so whether that's making a comment, asking questions, um, or by actively participating in the activity, those are some ways to engage. Sorry, let me go to the next slide. So here are a few things that we probably don't want to do in class. Do not interrupt others who are speaking, right? So that's sort of, we sort of talked about that in the last slide when we said, raise your hand, right? So we want to raise our hand when we want to speak and we do not want to interrupt others. Do not speak with your classmates when the instructor is teaching. So that's sort of like having a side conversation. And it's quite disruptive. And instructors will often tell you to stop with side conversations um, when they feel that, you know, you're not learning, you're not engaging, you're not paying attention, and it's disturbing other people from learning. Do not show lack of attention, right? And so that could be, you know, by doing things that are unrelated to the class or the class conversation of the moment. So things such as sleeping or playing on your phone or doing homework, right? Doing homework when you're not supposed to. And another tip is do not stay silent when you are asked a question, right? So if you're unsure of the answer, you can always say that you're unsure of the answer or you don't know. In an American classroom, there are many people of different backgrounds. There is what we call diversity, and each person has differences, right? So even in your classroom back home, you could be very different from your neighbor. Even if you share the same culture and language, you might have a different, you might hold different roles. You might prefer learning through different methods. And everyone may have different life experiences as well. So it's very important to realize the differences between that, or it's very important to realize that we all have differences. So in the American classroom, we want to acknowledge these differences and similarities as well, and we want to engage in it. We want to be respectful of the differences. We want to celebrate the differences. So differences are good. We also want to identify and celebrate similarities as well. but it's very important to be open-minded to differences. So you might not agree with your neighbor, but it's very important to listen and be open-minded and respectful. Another thing that's very common and different um, uh, with other cultures is that in the US, it's very important to know how to work together. Okay? Group work and collaboration is very common in the classroom. And some ways that the instructor might ask you to work with others in the class, um, some ways might be to turn to your neighbor and discuss the material, or number off and get into groups, or um, complete a long-term group project together. You might even be asked to trade papers and review each other's papers or critique each other's papers. So comment on it and see and sort of tell your peer how they did in the paper. Working together is very important. There is a quote by and I'm sorry if I'm pronouncing this incorrectly, Ryunosuke Satoru, and it says, "Individually, we are one drop, together we are an ocean." And that quote reflects the reason why the US values working together so highly. Being able to work together in teams is an important skill that is highly sought after in today's professional workplace. And this is because it mirrors how professionals work. Working together also allows us to practice communication skills and practice active learning, which active learning actually helps students process and retain information. And working together also allows us to engage with each other and learn from each other as well. So in the American classroom, when we work together, we want to uphold the appropriate etiquette. So we want to be respectful of each other's opinions and ideas. We don't want to say that our group mate's idea is not so good. We want to listen to one another and be respectful of one another. We want to consider each other and consider each other's ideas. We want to realize that the activity and the project that we're working on is important to every single person in the group. And so we want to do our part and we want to bear our weight, okay? Whatever we're assigned to do, we want to do it. But we also want to help our group mates who need help. We want to hold the attitude that we're all working together to achieve a common goal of succeeding in this project. So because we all have this common goal, we want to help our group mates who need help. Okay. So I skipped the last slide because I'm not sure if there's enough time for that. But I wanted to go over a little bit more about etiquette in the American classroom. And now we know that we have different types of classrooms. There is basic etiquette that we should uphold in all classrooms, all types of classrooms, all methods of deliveries. But there are some methods of deliveries or some classrooms that there are different etiquette that we should also consider. Okay, so some of this might be a little bit of review. All right, so for example, in-person face-to-face classes, right? So we did go over the importance of raising our physical hand to speak. But it's also important to make sure that we have eye contact with whoever's speaking. Okay? So if the speaker is your classmate who's presenting on something and they look over at you, you want to make eye contact because it shows that you're participating. Also, the same with the instructor. When they're teaching up there, they can see everything that's going on in the classroom. And you want to show that you're paying attention by making eye contact when the instructor is looking at you. And once again, we did go over this. We want to show physical alertness and attention. We don't want to do things that are not related to the class. We don't want to have those side conversations to disrupt the class and distract our classmates and our instructor. And we don't want to sleep. So those are some things that, those are some activities that could, that we don't want to do, that could, that definitely show that we're not being alert and not being attentive, right? Okay, so 100% online classes are a little bit different to physical face-to-face classes, right? In-person classes. Everything is pretty much done via reading and writing, right? Or typing. And so we want to be respectful in our communication, in our writing and discussion with our classmates. We still want to be courteous and polite. But we also want to show attention, right? So it's a little bit different from an in-person class where we want to make eye contact and not have those side conversations, right? We want to show attention by responding to questions when they're asked. So if our classmate asks us a question, we want to respond. We want to respond in a timely manner. And we don't want to let our classmates wait a month before we respond. And when our classmates share, when we're asked to share as an assignment, our classmates share, we want to share as well. Okay, we want to also show that engagement and attention. And in our writing, we want to be clear. So we want to make sure that we proofread what we write so that the readers understand us. With online live, we also have a few differences here. So in addition to the in-person and 100% online classroom etiquette that we just reviewed, there are some additional tips that I would like to give you. Okay, so with online live classes, we should turn on our camera. And when we turn on our camera, we want to show our entire face. And of course, if we're showing our face and turning on our camera, we want to make sure we look and dress appropriately. Turning on our camera shows that we are paying attention in class, and it encourages the instructor actually, and encourages other students to turn on their camera and participate. Okay. We also want to make sure we mute ourselves when we're not talking. Okay, so this is because we don't want background noises to disturb the class. Sometimes background noises are so loud that you can't even hear the speaker who's speaking. So it's pretty disruptive, and we want to mute ourselves when we're not talking so we can avoid those background noises. But of course, we want to unmute ourselves when we do want to participate and we do want to say something. So in an online live class, we want to show that we are in class and only participating as well. So this is similar to the other two classrooms that we just went over. We want to show that we're in class and participating and attentive. So we don't want to be doing other things while we're supposed to be in class. Like we don't want to be brushing our teeth. We don't want to be smiling and laughing in the camera because we're talking to our friends and our camera's on and everybody in the class can sort of see you're doing something else. It's pretty disrespectful to the instructor, so we want to avoid that. sometimes we might have problems and issues in class, right? Maybe your classmate might have said something you disagreed with, or um, you might have a problem that you want to address with your instructor. It is very important to address those problems. It is. However, we want to make sure that we're addressing issues diplomatically. So we want to be courteous and polite with our peers and our instructors. If you feel uncomfortable addressing the issues in class and you feel that it's more appropriate to talk to your instructors one-on-one privately, then college instructors usually have what we call an office hour. It's a time for instructors to meet with students privately, individually. And so definitely find out when your instructor's office hours are. So what about communicating with our instructor? What's the etiquette there? Okay, so here are some tips. Usually, college instructors are extremely busy, so we do want to be respectful of their time. And one way is to make an appointment with the instructor and let them know that you're coming. You want to be courteous and polite and prepared before going to the office hours. So make sure you know what you want to ask, know the questions, and show that you've done research and that you've given your question thought before approaching the instructor with a question. So for example, if you want to ask what lesson you're going to be having for the fourth week of school, usually you would be able to find that information in what we call a syllabus. And that's something that the instructor will hand out at the beginning of the course. And it will have all the information with what you're going to be learning in the course throughout the span of the entire class period. And so sometimes it's a whole 15 weeks, right? The class period. And there will be, the syllabus will also provide class policies, grading information. So of course, it's always important to keep that syllabus and review it. And if you have questions regarding any of that, make sure that you look through your syllabus first. Okay, so then when you approach your instructor, they know that you did read the material, that you did do your research. Another thing is to realize that the instructor will recognize you from class. So if you are not paying attention in class all the time, you're sleeping in class, they're gonna know that you were that person. So before you do anything that, that might show that you're not paying attention, you wanna think about things like this first. Try to see things from the instructor's point of view. That's another tip. Okay, so if you have an issue that you want to talk about, make sure you listen and try to understand the professor and where he or she is coming from. And if you disagree, at least you thought about the explanation of your professor, that you try to put yourself in their position. And that's another way to be respectful and polite. When you communicate with your instructor, you should also be as professional as you can. And so that could be addressing the instructor as professor. So my students often call me Professor Ui to show respect, right? And it's also a professional way of addressing the instructor. And another way to be professional is if you're emailing the instructor, make sure that you don't say, hey, what's going on? And use a bunch of words that you might not always use when, let's say, if you're going to a formal event, okay, or writing a formal paper, right? You don't want to use informal words. So the same thing, in order to be professional, if you're emailing an instructor, use professional language. Make sure you proofread your email so that there's correct spelling and punctuation. Those are other ways to be professional. And also, of course, use your best communication skills when you are communicating with the instructor. And that is through, um, if you see the instructor one-on-one through office hours, or you speak with them over this platform like Zoom, or even emailing the instructor, make sure you use your best communication skills. And here's a funny little comic. It says it's in the syllabus. As I mentioned, the syllabus is that handout with all the grading information, class policies, the class calendar, all of that will be in the syllabus. And it's just this comic sort of pokes fun at what happens a lot with students and the syllabus, right? So here, this student is saying, what did we cover in class last week? And the instructor saying it's in the syllabus. Another student asks, what's your late homework policy? And the instructor says it's in the syllabus. Another student says, when are your office hours? And the instructor says it's in the syllabus. And then the last student says, how will grades be computed? And she holds up a sign without even saying, the sign says it's in the syllabus. She doesn't actually say it herself, but her sign says it's in the syllabus. So that's a funny little comic. All right, so that's the end of our presentation on classroom etiquette. Thank you for listening. And if you have any questions, please email us at isp@canyons.edu. We also have our website, College of the Canyons website. It's www.canyons.edu. And also make sure to follow us on social media so you know what's going on. We have a Facebook, we have Instagram, Twitter, TikTok, and even our YouTube channel. And all of those handles are listed here on the screen. We hope to be able to one day see you at College of the Canyons. Thanks again.